All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, live here from northern New Jersey, the New York City area, covering the Giants and the NFL draft, whatever it is you guys want to talk about. We are here to answer your questions and to try to give you the lowdown, the skinny, the insights, and the analysis that you're looking for on your favorite team, Big Blue, or on anything around pro football and in the NFL. As you guys know, this league never sleeps. The sport never sleeps. We're rolling towards the NFL owners meetings, which take place next week in Orlando, Florida. I will be there, boots on the ground, to talk to Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, John Mara, and others from the Giants ownership, executives, and also from teams around the league. But before I go down there, I wanted to talk to you. We're doing one special episode of Talkin Ball Live this week. I was sick on Monday. I'm back at it today, but I'm also going to be away for the rest of the week to catch a quick breather before we ramp up the draft coverage to another level that's already hit its stride with our Phil Simms podcast episode and some great insights from Phil on the quarterbacks. As we know, the Giants and quarterbacks, two topics linked, attached at the hip, and it's not going to change until we get to the draft. I see Jacob saying it to tell everybody, hit the like and sub button for Pat on your way in. Jacob, I appreciate you always reminding people of that. That's right. You can purchase a super chat or super sticker to jump right to the top of the queue if you want your question answered first or your comment addressed immediately. Another great way to support the channel. But even if not, subscribe to the channel at PL and NFL here on YouTube. And hit those thumbs up buttons. Those likes help us drive engagement. And it reminds YouTube and it reminds the Giants fans out there who don't know about this yet to come and join us and have a constructive conversation. Sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we won't. But really what I find is I learn as much from you guys during these as you learn from me, because it's always a great thing to get a pulse of the fan base. And also you guys care about this team. You followed this team for a long time. And you're into all the details of it, right? And so you guys have your finger on the pulse of where the team is, where it's been, and where it needs to go. And together we can discuss the best ways for the Giants to do that. I'm going to tell you guys about Bet Online, and then we'll get right into your questions. The tournament is here. Bet Online is your bracket headquarters for this season with the best bracket contest out there and odds, lines, and info on every game and every round right up until the national championship. You can access the most up-to-the-minute wagering information anytime from your desktop or mobile devices, and even track your bracket real-time all the way through the tournament. Head to the BetOnline app today and get in on all the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And where we start is with Jacob. Jacob, thanks again for the shout-out and for the reminder for the subs and the likes. Jacob says, was the J.J. McCarthy reported visit a 30 visit or something private? Yes, that's one of the top 30 visits. So Jacob's referring to, I believe Jordan Schultz reported that J.J. McCarthy visited the Giants recently. They had dinner, etc. So that is what takes place on these 30 visits. And listen, I said this before, I'll say this again. Now, these 30 visits matter for every team, right? Because you only have 30 of them. So who you choose, that's a good indication of the guys you're really zeroing in on. But for Joe Schoen and the Giants especially, what we've seen so far is the prospects that Joe Schoen spends the most time on and with tend to be where his interest is strongest and where he's going to lean. Now, that doesn't mean J.J. McCarthy's definitely going to be the Giants' pick. There's, word around the league that I'm sure you guys have seen this now out in social media, but that the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy could be a potential match, that the Vikings have interest in J.J. McCarthy. There's some thought that maybe they're getting that they got that extra first round pick from the Texans in the back of the first to try to make a move up the board. So we will see. But yes, Jacob, that was a 30 visit, a top 30 visit. The Giants doing serious homework on top quarterbacks. Giants Chronicles, what's going on? Says, hey, Pat, couple questions to kick us off. What do you hear about Tre'Davious White and any other interest the Giants have in the corner market? What do you hear about running back 2 market and who are Giants interested in? Yeah, Trey White's a guy they know well. Also makes sense as a fit because even though the Bills' defensive staff is not here with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, the way that Shane Bowen and Brian Daboll intend to run this defense now, it's going to look more like Buffalo's under Sean McDermott with the four-man rush, coverage in the back, and that's something that White has played in, right, in Buffalo. Now, the downside of Tre'Davious White is the injury history. The Giants are a team right now that are trying to get out of relying on players who have significant injury risks and injury histories. He had the Achilles last year. He had an ACL a couple years prior. So that doesn't mean he won't sign with the Giants. It could mean that the Giants could get a player like that on a more affordable contract. Where the Giants are in, they have, I believe right now they have about a little over $6 million in cap space. They could restructure contracts if they need to fit in salaries, but they're looking at RB2 and that opposite corner spot as places where hopefully they can address, because they can't break the bank to do it. So can they address it affordably at a veteran price? So that's why a guy like White makes sense as a potential fit, especially with the report that he is visiting the Rams, but also tracking to visit the Titans and the Giants. Chronicles, I haven't heard a specific running back that stands out over the others yet among those who are remaining, who would be the Giants' target there. All right, Chris checks in with a super chat and a super sticker. Thank you so much, Chris. $4.99. Do you think it's time for a change at quarterback? I don't think Jones is good enough to win games in this league. Chris, I think that the Giants need to plan for life without Daniel Jones, which is why, like, I would gamble anything I own on the Giants coming out of this draft with a quarterback. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll take him at number 6, but it does indicate and point to the fact that they are in the mindset of, we have to start developing a young guy. Also, bringing Drew Lock in, and the idea that Drew Lock believes there's a chance for him to play, that points to the fact that the Giants with Daniel Jones, they have that investment made in him, but the combination of the injury history and the performance leads the Giants to create this runway to get away from that player and try to get out from it on the other end, to a place where hopefully they're more sustainably competitive. And also they can have the quarterback that then they can build the roster around, rather than continuing to piecemeal the structure, but not having the quarterback there who can elevate them and all the things around them. Now, in Jones's defense, obviously, Daniel Jones was a player who last year, really didn't have much of a chance at the start of the season, given the offensive line he was playing behind. So in that sense, if you look at what the Giants have done so far in free agency, now who knows whether it's going to work or not? I don't know whether it's going to completely address it. But when you look at the Runyon signing at guard, the Illuminor signing, a guy probably ends up tackle or swing tackle, has guard experience. Aaron Stinney coming from Tampa Bay, the Vikings backup center as well. And then another area that was kind of like a sneaky need to address area, the blocking tight end area, right? Manhurts, Stoll, bringing in guys who can better execute some of these short yardage plays and help the tackles on the outside that the Giants weren't always getting last year in some certain situations from a Daniel Bellinger or even a Lawrence Cager in limited availability or in limited opportunities. So what they're doing right now in free agency is trying to ensure that they can protect, right, at all costs, create pass protection, create opportunities to move the line of scrimmage. That's what they've been working on. And so that doesn't necessarily point to moving away from Daniel. To me, it points to trying to operate a competent offense with Jones back there, given how delicate it is now with the injury history, but also with an eye on the future. And I say this all the time, Chris, and I'll wrap my answer up for your question with this. And thanks again for the super chat. I truly believe that if Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll don't draft a quarterback now, they'll never get their guy. And so now where they are in the draft creates a tough situation for them because they don't have the number 2 or 3 pick, they have the number 6 pick. So, it could be a situation where they like a couple of these quarterbacks and they just can't get to them, right? And is it possible that the guy they love is also the 4th quarterback off the board? Maybe. That's possible. But there's a lot of variables behind just the desire to go get your quarterback, right? And in addition to that. And that's why I think, it's also interesting to talk about a developmental guy like Joe Milton III from Tennessee in a later round, let's say, or a Michael Penix flyer in the 2nd round, even though I know the Giants with injured players, I think they're a little wary when it comes to that. But I think the idea of getting a guy here who could develop is an intriguing one. But I said this before and I'll say this again. Until the Giants are out of the quarterback market, they're in it. And I believe they're in it at the top of the draft. Thanks again, Chris. All right. Chronicle says, what do you hear about quarterbacks in the draft? Is JJ really a top 10 pick? Feels like a 2nd rounder to me. Do I dare say a possible OBJ reunion? Who the hell is going to be a threat on offense for this team? OBJ, haven't heard anything on that yet. Obviously, they kicked the tires last year. Without Saquon here now, and Sterling Shepard, not part of the team, whether he's working for the team or I don't know what that's going to end up being, whether he's going to be around or not. But regardless, that doesn't seem like the right fit to me, unless Odell wants to, come back to the Giants to kind of, ride off into the sunset with the team that he became famous starring for. But I haven't heard anything on that yet. Is that something you would want? Is JJ really a top 10 pick? It seems like that, talking to people in the league. I agree with you. He looks more like a late 1st, 2nd rounder to me. But sounds like some people in the league feel differently. And as far as what do I hear about Giants quarterback in the draft, to be honest, as I sit here doing this live chat, part of the reason for this chat and one of the topics I wanted to dive into was previewing the NFL owners meetings. And when we get to Orlando, Florida, one of the things I'm extremely eager to talk to John Mara about is trying to find some clarity at all on this quarterback situation. We just talked about it with Chris, but no one's going to tip their hand in the Giants organization and say, oh, this guy's our guy, right? Jaden Daniels is our guy. We hope he doesn't get picked before 6, whatever it is. No one's going to tip their hand. But to really hear John Mara's conviction or lack thereof on a Daniel Jones, his opinion on Drew Lock and why he's here, his opinion on how this draft needs to go and where he sees his team. Because John Mara is honest when he talks to us. He is honest about where he sees his team, where it needs to be, what he views as the priorities in the offseason, what needs to be taken care of. And John's words and his tone on where the team stands typically reflects where he feels like the resources need to be applied. So Joe Shane's obviously the GM, but I'm eager to hear John Mara hopefully clarify this quarterback situation and issue. There's just been too much noise about Daniel Jones and about this team to ignore when it comes to the quarterback spot and a possible change in the near future. All right. Chronicles also says, doesn't seem like we have any star power on offense, and that's a real concern to me. We need to score touchdowns to win football games. We need weapons, and we haven't gotten any so far. I'm done. Thanks, Pat. Chronicles, great job helping kick us off. That's what's very interesting about this discussion is if you can get Odunze from Washington at 6, one of these top 3 receivers, right? You want a quarterback for the future, but like you said, you need to get into the end zone, especially this year. You don't get into the end zone this year, then you're talking about maybe a new GM and a new coach running the team. So, that's where it becomes very delicate. Jacob says, Pat, from what are you hearing? Is it wide receiver or quarterback in the 1st round? Jacob, I'm not going to stand here and sit here and lie to you and tell you that I know. I'm not going to do it. I would love to be the guy who has enough inside info at this moment to tell you it's one over the other. I can't do it, and that's one thing I'll do. If I don't have an answer, I'll tell you I don't know, and I'll go try to find it some more, right? That's just what we do here. But I think I personally highly doubt they're not going to take a quarterback in the first round. I think they want to take a quarterback in the first round. It just could end up wide receiver based on the amount of QBs that go over them, especially if someone trades over them and maybe, could 4 go ahead of them. I think it's more likely maybe 3 go before the Giants pick. Does Joe Shane become desperate enough that he, for his guy trying to go get his quarterback, that he's going to mortgage assets, premium future assets to make that move, right? I don't know if that's where he stands. I wouldn't rule it out. And I do think that I would lean quarterback over receiver at this moment. But again, as Chronicles just mentioned, if this team's offense is just as bad or worse, and they don't have guys who can get them in the end zone, then who's running and coaching this team next year? Antonio, what's going on? How you doing? Antonio says, are the Giants interested in adding another safety? There are still quality guys available. Yes, and that's something, honestly, the Giants organization, Antonio, has done at a value clip, often later in off seasons, a position they filled out, and that teams tend to. Like, you think about, this is several years ago now, but like Logan Ryan, the way that, when Judge and Gettleman were here, like they brought Logan Ryan in kind of like late summer on a team-friendly contract with incentives, right? And then when he plays well on that, then they pay the guy, right? If he exceeds expectations, whatever it is. That's the position. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like I remember they brought in like Willie Gay during a training camp, and he lasted a week on the roster or something. But that's, the Giants are a team right now where you got to be smart about how you're spending now at these positions. They've already said, we don't think safety is a premium position as far as the resources we pour into it. So like you said, there's a lot of names out there. No one I can tell you right now is standing out over another, but that's something that they need to add depth and talent at for sure. Is Ezekiel Elliott somebody you think the Giants could be interested in? I don't think that would not shock me, especially to complement Devin Singletary, a shifty, versatile back, a guy like Zeke who can, stick the ball in between those A gaps. I think the Giants are going to need, if you look at their backfield right now, they need some thunder, right? And so that, that Zeke doesn't really fit the profile of the type of player that they ideally would be adding to their roster as far as a rebuild goes. But just like they're hunting for, like, let's say, strong talent at value in the veteran market when it comes to the opposite corner position, Zeke is that kind of player at running back where you could get a guy with talent past his prime, but who could still give you something on a friendly deal. So, that wouldn't completely shock me. Hunter says, seeing the Browns pay Jerry Jeudy $19 a year makes me glad we have Slayton for $6 million a year. Well, Slayton, underratedly consistent. When I remember when I pointed out that stat, I figured it out. The idea that he had, I think it was he led them in receiving yards for the last 5 years, I think it was. And that kind of went viral, and he really is underrated for sure. Jeudy, though, Jerry Jeudy he's one of those guys who, like, if he stayed healthy for 17 games, he would help win you a fantasy league, right? Like, he's unstoppable when he's on the field consistently. He's just struggled to stay on the field. But Jeudy is a really, really, really good player. And so if he ever stays healthy, hopefully he does, he could validate a contract like that. Chronicle says, any specific names you're hearing? ways to create cap space. We talked about that a little already. Sorry. I'm going to try to keep getting to more. Savage Steve says, I swear I have this feeling the Giants are going to take JJ. Yeah, it sounds like it was, Connor Hughes reported, the other day from SNY that people around the league believe that JJ McCarthy is the Giants guy at 6. And from what I understand, the Giants were not thrilled that idea was circulating and getting out. So I don't know if that means they intend to take him, but I thought that was interesting that the Giants were not thrilled that got out. Something fascinating to see. Mark Sullivan, welcome back. Mark checks in with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you. Chris Sims, extremely prescient, ranks wide receivers, Neighbors, Thomas, Harrison, Odunze, Wilson, surprisingly. Trade down if top 3 QBs are not there at 6. Yeah, it's the receiver class is really talented at the top. That's interesting. Neighbors and Thomas, then Harrison and Odunze. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. LSU winning again here. Odunze is a guy who I'm fascinated by because Neighbors' highlights are, and some of his big play ability, run after catch is sexier and like higher ceiling type stuff, it looks like at times. But Odunze has the production and is a really good route runner and looks like an elite player too. All right, let's see. Thank you for that super sticker, Mark. I appreciate you. All right. Chronicle says about Savage Steve saying they're going to take JJ. I know, Savage Steve. I don't want it, but at this point, it's like, screw it. It is what it is. Candyman says, rather trade out with Vikings so they can have JJ and we get their 2 picks in the first round. Candyman, I don't hate that. I'm starring Candyman's comment. What do you guys think? Would you rather get one of those top 3 receivers at 6 or take a quarterback at 6 or trade back with the Vikings and get their 2 firsts? I don't hate that, especially like if the Giants, want to get a position player and a quarterback there in that first round. The only problem with that is, it's Candy, as I've talked about this before, but what the question there is, how do the Giants cluster their players at the top? So, they will have, let's say they have 7 blue chip elite players who it's like, okay, these are our top tier guys. Like if we can get one of these guys with our top pick, like that's where we feel good about it. Okay. If you trade from 6 to the Vikings pick, what is that? 11, 12? I think it's 11. Yeah, it's 11. So if you trade back to 11, are those 7 players gone by then? Chances are they are, right? Now, that doesn't mean your next tier doesn't have a high quality of players, but what if your next tier has 3 players in it, right? Are those top 10 guys on your board gone by 11? That's where these teams start thinking about. It's not only based on the need of your draft board and your roster, but it's also about all the scouting that's gone into grading and evaluating how valuable these guys will be to your roster, not only now, but in the future. And so sometimes trades back like that can be dangerous, where you tell yourself, we're getting premium assets here and we're moving back, right? But you're trading yourself out of some players that you were hoping were going to be there and they're not. Now, Candyman, one of the reasons I like what you just said is that, we all know that Joe Shane traded one of his extra second round picks in the Brian Burns deal, right? So if he had an idea of, let's say they were operating from a standpoint of, wow, we have 3 picks in our top 47 on the draft board with the first and the 2 seconds. and they really were excited about getting 3 players there, maybe a quarterback and 2 position players. If they don't want to miss out and they had a plan and they have guys that they're really eyeing in some of these spots, you get that extra first round pick, that late first. Now you get a player at 11, a player at 23, and a player at 47, right? So, yeah, I like where your head's at. That's going to depend on where these guys fall on the board and what they think of these players. Jacob says, when is Kayvon eligible for an extension? Do you think Burns' deal impacts his deal? Good question, Jacob. Kayvon will be eligible after his 3rd NFL season, so after this coming season. I think there's a chance Burns' deal impacts his and creates, an interesting dynamic for sure. If Kayvon, goes crazy with sacks and has a monster year this year, you look at the Burns contract. What is Kayvon going to want? What is he going to deserve? Right. That is absolutely something to consider, that will be impacted by the Burns deal. Now, if Kayvon does not perform at an elite level, it still might be a delicate situation, but it might be more frustration on his part, right? You never know exactly how it's going to go, but I definitely think it's something to monitor, the fact that now Brian Burns is on this roster making, closer to $30 million a year. And think about it now, Joe Shane's gotten here and he has drafted a pass rusher 5th overall and traded a 2nd round pick and a 5th and paid a pass rusher almost $30 million a year on a long-term contract extension. Very interesting. All right. Chronicle says, Pat, what's with the Saquon story, man? We need to move on. Stop acting like this is a romantic breakup. Saquon went to the Eagles and went their separate ways for the best. No goodbye needed. Yeah, Chronicles, that's just kind of my opinion. I mean, I'm not worked up about it or anything, but I just feel like after a lot of time has passed now, I thought it was noticeable how quiet the Giants were on Barkley's departure. And I think, Saquon at first, even like he said, he didn't handle it the right way. He didn't say a proper goodbye. And so I thought he corrected that mistake and said a proper goodbye, thanked the Mara and Tisch families, et cetera. And, I just think I see other teams around the league thanking players for their time and service there and their significance to their teams and franchises and contributions on the field and off the field. And, the Panthers did it with Brian Burns. The Bills did it with Jordan Poyer. He eventually signs in Miami. The Cowboys did it with Tyron Smith, whatever the case may be. And, listen, I know Saquon chose the Eagles, so there's going to be, it's going to be hard feelings, and it's going to be, he's the enemy now. I mean, listen, he's the enemy now. So, and this isn't even about like Saquon specifically being owed anything. I mean, it's like the Giants didn't win a lot when he was here, right? But I just think, he represented the franchise well when he was here. 2-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. And, I think if, the Giants have a reputation they want to maintain or build or create of how they treat people and act, I just think that that's the right thing to do. I just feel like it's the right thing to do for them to acknowledge Saquon's time and maybe even throw a little dig. We're looking forward to beating you twice a year. Like I thought Sean O'Hara did a good job of it on Twitter when he mentioned it. Mark Sullivan checks in with another super sticker. Thank you. He says, Chris, let's see. That was your first one. Candyman, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate you. Mark says, does Shane need John Mara's approval to trade high future year picks? So, Mark and Chris, I see your super sticker. I'll get to that in a second. Mark, Joe Shane is running this now, and the John Mara and the Mara family have more than ever they hired Joe Shane to run this team and to run it as he sees fit. But John Mara is always going to be involved in the conversations, and as he always says, John always says that he rarely exercises his like quote unquote veto power, but everybody knows he has it, but he doesn't exercise it as often as what he says, as people think. But he's certainly involved in those conversations. A great example of this recently, it's like last year, the Giants made several targeted signings on defense on the interior of their defense, right? Bobby Okereke, middle linebacker, Nacho Nunez Roches at defensive tackle, Ashawn, etc. And then at the owners' meetings, we get there and John Mara starts talking about how agonizing it was to watch the Giants get bludgeoned on the ground in the running game, and how he felt like they had to address that and they had to prioritize stopping the run. And it was a good example of, yes, Joe Schoen identified and executed a plan to accomplish something. But when you hear that the owner of the team felt like this needed to be the priority, it falls into place for you that it is a collaboration that involves the owner, that conversation, right? So Mark, that's where that is. Like, John Mara would not, if Joe Schoen felt like the value was there on a trade like that, and it was going to be the best thing for the organization, and that's what he told John Mara, then John Mara would say, right, like, I trust you, right? Like, that's how they would operate in that situation. But, just like anybody else, Mara would have, Joe Schoen would need to convince John Mara, let's say, that, here's what our first round pick next year most likely would be. Here's the range of that pick. So here's the value that we would be giving up. Here's the player we are getting. Here's why that's good for us, not only this year, but in the future, right? So it would be a conversation, a collaborative conversation. But if Joe Schoen told him through that conversation that it was the best thing for the organization, then that's what would happen, I believe. But it's an interesting question, Mark, because theoretically, the Giants could finish with a very high pick in next year's draft with what this season could bring for them. And so if you're trading next year's first in a deal, what are you trading? Are you trading a top 5 pick? Good question. Chris also said, do the Giants want to become like Buffalo's offense? I think that it's a pipe dream, Chris, to think that they can be Buffalo's offense without Josh Allen. He's Josh Allen. I do think that that's what Brian Daboll runs, is that offense, but running it without Josh Allen doesn't yield the same results. So I think with Mike Kafka still here, you've seen some mix in of the Chiefs Kafka concepts into it, but it's Daboll's offense. Like, it's not Daboll and Kafka's offense, it's Daboll's. So yes, they run Buffalo's offense, but they need to find a way to evolve and improve it, because it's not the same without the player that made it go in Buffalo and still makes it go in Buffalo. Jacob also suggesting a trade back with the Vikings. Yeah, it's definitely something to kick around. Hunter says, I'm glad we have somewhat an offensive line and depth. It's shameful the first time Daniel Jones 6 years, he has a competent line and he will be run out of town. I get it still, but tough. Chronicle says, what is oh, you're killing me. What does Mrs. Leonard think of these 2+ hour live streams? Appreciate you taking the time away from your family to do these, Pat. Chronicles, I'm going to hit a big like on that one because, that's well said right there. Always sacrifices. Jacob says, with Nacho and Ashawn gone, do you think we look at D tackle in middle rounds? Yeah, especially because the Giants, like young D tackles in their depth, have not shown. I know Jordan Riley's here, but like none of these guys have stood out yet as like solutions, right? So they do need to continue to fortify that. Danny Crazy Eyes Duds says, can't wait for Mara to face the music for his love affair with Daniel Jones. Yeah, that's another thing I know fans want to know is who was involved, how much and how little in the Daniel Jones contract in the first place. Right. Yeah. Jacob mentioned Nacho being gone. He is not. Nacho's still on the team. Ashawn is gone. But still, Jacob is right that they need to fortify the interior. What is the market on Tre'Davious White? I see 3 teams, but what is the price range? Yeah. You know what, Hunter? That Tre'Davious White will have to make a decision between money with the Titans, winning with the Rams, and fit and comfort and, market with New York. Like, I think he will have a chance to get a little bit more money with a team like Tennessee. But the going with the Rams probably puts him in the playoffs and gives him a chance to compete, right? Although they did lose Aaron Donald. But so it's going to be a reasonable veteran deal, a prove-it deal, you would think. Young DTs need to pan out, no doubt. Bandit, what's going on? How you doing? Danny says, I'm tired of the DJ excusers blaming the O-line. It's been 5 years. We've seen enough of DJ. Yeah, not a lot of people have confidence in Jones anymore. Hunter says, I don't disagree with Danny being bad at points, but we have done everything known to man to kill his chances. Michael says, do you think any of all this quarterback stuff is real or smoke? I think it's real. Luann, what's going on? Good to see you. Glock Roach says, hey, Pat, longtime listener, first-time commenter. Keep doing you, man. Glock, appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Please subscribe when we're done here to the page and hit the thumbs up, the like buttons. Remember, guys, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker. If I'm not getting to your question fast enough, we can jump it right to the front of the queue. I'll answer your question or address your comment or opinion immediately. It's a good way to get your stuff recognized right away, and it spices up the chat. It supports what we do here. I appreciate that. But if not, just hit the like button. That helps us as well. It's bringing more people here, helping this conversation grow. And really can't thank you guys enough. Remember, we do the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard live typically 2 days a week during the offseason. Right now, we're doing Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Schedule's just a little different right now. It's a different week, taking a few days off leading up to the owners' meetings, but typically Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. And then during the season, remember, last year we did post-game live chats from the stadium, wherever I was, home or away. Right after I got out of the locker room, wrote my story for the Daily News, jumped on YouTube with you guys. All the diehards here who were day oneers know exactly what I'm talking about. That's always a blast, what we do after those games, especially after wins, obviously. And then I can bring all the post-game information right to you from being in the locker room, talking to Brian Dable, talking to the players, and getting the pulse of exactly what the team is feeling and thinking coming out of their win or loss. Remember, I'm on Twitter or X at PLeonardNYDN, and my handle everywhere else, YouTube, IG, TikTok, Threads, is PL on NFL. So really appreciate you guys. And obviously, we do this on the Believe Network and, of course, the New York Daily News. That's the website. You can find all of my columns and stories and coverage of the Giants and the league. Jacob says, when do the 30 visits stop? I'm pretty sure they stop a couple weeks prior to the draft, Jacob. Pro days run to the first week of April, and I believe 30 visits have to stop. I want to say it's 2 to 3 weeks out of the draft, maybe 3 weeks out of the draft. Hunter says, I've been seeing mock drafts. Seem like a lot of people are mocking JJ at 4 in a trade with Arizona, and Chargers take Neighbors, and Marvin falls to us. Hey, would you hate getting Marvin Harrison Jr.? Timothy says, hey, Pat, will the Giants be featured on Hard Knocks on HBO? I don't know that, Timothy. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything. They like to keep that under lock and key. Jackie Chan says, draft a wide receiver 1. Danny and Hunter going back and forth on the Daniel Jones O-line debate. I love that too. We can even have these comments and conversations back and forth, on the side of what we're talking about live too, because you guys have great ideas and insight on the team. Danny says, you're right, our O-line isn't good, but Jones isn't good either. Did you know there was a game this season where neither Tyrod or DeVito were sacked? The O-line looked better with our backups. Well, Danny, in defense, the O-line got better when the front office went into damage control mode, signed Justin Pugh off the street. Some guys got healthier. Like, they made some changes there. I mean, The O-line was better when Jones was out. That's what I would say. I'm not making excuses for Daniel's play. I'm not. But, let's just be fair. Jackie Chan, good evening. Scorpio says, I hope we get J.J. McCarthy. He's a good player. He's a winner and a baller. I don't care what the critics say. H5000 says, if Brian Burns averages 12-plus sacks, he can hold the edge and can shed blocks, and Thibodeau at least improves. Then Thibodeau will improve at least 25%. Hey, listen, if Brian Burns earns the contract that he just got paid, if he validates that, then every Giants fan is going to have a big smile on their face coming out of this season. Doug says, did you find anything out about the conditional 5th rounder in the Burns trade? Giants website listed as conditional, but Panthers website does not. Yeah, Doug, still don't have clarity on that. Sorry. I know I told you I would get clarity on it, and I still don't. So trying to get to the bottom of that. For some reason, like sometimes when these things go in and go official, they don't become a part of the public record and completely available and clear and clarified for a couple weeks. Like it has to do with the league officially processing them, or the NFLPA officially processing contracts, let's say, so all of those things are related to when that information becomes official and exactly what the details are, because often, sometimes information I get or other reporters get, especially, some of the ones that work for these rights holders, they get fed the information and they hear it secondhand, but they're not actually looking at it. Right. And so we might get that confirmed or get that first reported, but we might not be looking at the actual thing somebody we trust might be telling us. Right. And so that's one way that can happen, where you can, you can hear it as one thing, but then officially it comes through as, that, but with a twist. But that's why you got to be careful and thorough as a reporter. G-Man says, is it all possible the Vikings trade with Arizona? Fingers crossed, the Chargers pass on Harrison Jr. and he falls to the Giants. Yeah, that's possible. The amount of quarterbacks that are attractive in this draft are really creating a lot of scenarios at the top. Yeah, since they had him in for an interview. Yeah, they're all over the receivers and the quarterbacks up there. Hunter says he wants Boston Scott at running back. Also, when are we going to sign a safety? I mean, they need some depth there for sure. They need some talent and depth there. I think they will. Hunter says, the way I look at it, drafting JJ, we were in the same boat in 3 years, drafting a quarterback again, top 3 or 4. Well, then they'll have a new coach and GM. Michael says, in my opinion, Daniel Jones for another season is unwatchable. He's terrible. Tyrod Taylor looked much better behind that O-line. The line was a little better when Tyrod played, but Tyrod did outplay Daniel last year. He was the best quarterback on the roster. No question about it. H5000 says, for the Brian Burns trade to be worth it, he needs to average 12 sacks, hold the edge, shed blocks, and Thibodeau needs to improve 25% overall and not regress. Oh, I see what your point was. Got it. Yeah, that is a monster contract. As I said, when they signed it and when they got him, it was an aggressive move. It was a desperate move as well, like from a team that really has a need there and also needs to win some games and show some progress. They get a young player, though, and also did not have to pay the premium in the trade that the Panthers were being offered in years past, which is, excellent. But still, you're right. It needs to hit big, not just a little bit. Hirsch, good to see you, man, as always. OG says, what's good, Pat? I have no faith in John Mara, Joe Schoen, or this organization as a fan. Depending on Daniel Jones to be healthy isn't intelligent at all. Yeah, OG, I don't think Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll can afford to sit on their hands and depend on Daniel Jones staying healthy, and I don't think they are. And that's, again, there's so much to think about with permutations of how the top of the draft can go. But isn't it really hard to see Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll just running back Daniel Jones again? And like I mentioned earlier, when I talked with Phil Simms in my podcast about the idea of a Joe Milton in the later rounds being an intriguing and enticing developmental player. And I think that's true. But does this general manager and this head coach, do they really have the ability to go into this season with just Daniel Jones and Drew Lock as guys who are conceivably going to play at quarterback and that they're going to win some games? Like, do we really think they believe that? I don't know. I find that hard to believe. Jacob says, any rumors on a Penix visit? I haven't heard specifically. I would think there would be. Jim says, "Hey Pat, great conversation with Phil Simms. Hope you can get Chris on to discuss quarterbacks, wide receivers, and the Giants. It's a good idea. What is Justin Pugh's status? Didn't you think the O-line improved shortly after he rejoined?" He's still out there, still a free agent. I think looking at the amount of signings the Giants have made, especially adding 2 guards already, looks unlikely that he would be back, especially because Pugh is a guy who I know wants to play where he signs. He doesn't want to just be along for the ride. Like, he wants to be a factor. Now, that doesn't mean that he couldn't sign back with the Giants again at some point and be a starter, be a factor. In fact, I know, talked to him directly. We talked on the podcast about how he, last year was coming off that injury. And so he had rehabilitated, but he still was getting his legs and himself back physically as he was working his way through the season. And so if he has a chance now in a fully healthy offseason to regain whatever his top form is at this point in his career. So, this is a player who, I remember what Pugh said to me was a couple of weeks ago was like, listen, they have bigger things to worry about than me. So, they'll go about their business right now in free agency, and then we'll see where it stands. I do remember, though, coming away from our most recent conversation, extensive conversation, thinking that his days as a Giant were over, or that it was more likely, that they were over. But, the door's never closed until he ends up somewhere else. And I know the Giants hold a special place in his heart. So if the sides can make it work, it would work. But I know I recall feeling like he was skeptical. Jacob says, which quarterback reminds you most of Josh Allen? None of these guys remind me of Josh Allen. No offense to them. Tariq says, JJ McCarthy is Daniel Jones and Mitchell Trubisky. JJ ain't him. Giants fans and the media hyped up DJ and Mitch and some suckers bit. JJ is a game manager, which is unworthy of a pick, a 6 pick, a fireable offense. Yeah, Tariq, that goes to the point of, if you're going to draft a quarterback high, listen, you can't blame. Here's what I would say. If a general manager and a coach do all their homework and their research and their scouting, and they decide they got to have this quarterback high, then, it's worth the swing. But to your point, if you swing and you miss, there's big consequences, right? So we've already seen that here in New York. And to your point, maybe that happens again, depending if the Giants pick the wrong guy. Let's see. Jesse says, hey, Pat, what is your favorite edition of the free agents so far, excluding Brian Burns? Thanks. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, I think Illuminor, obviously John Runyon is the player who got more money per year on the offensive line for the Giants in free agency. But I think Illuminor is a player that the Giants needed, right? They needed a veteran that they could trust to be a swing tackle or to start for them if Neal doesn't work out there coming back off the injury. And, last year, clearly there was a huge gap in understanding from the Giants front office coaching staff on down on what would be required to field sufficient depth in an offensive line, not just high-end talent and, injuries that didn't work out, whatever. Illuminor is the type of signing that, and I remember, I think I wrote it in late January that he was going to be a Giant, with Carmen Brasillo coming from the Raiders and him just looking like a perfect fit for what they needed. So it wasn't hard to see coming. And it certainly was tracking from the get-go. But that is one that I think, you invest some resources in, you don't go crazy with it, but you get a player who he's not going to make an all-pro team, but he's going to stabilize something for you, right? And so those are the kind of players that, every team needs. Thanks for that question, Jesse. That was a good question. Jacob says, you think the Neighbors being wide receiver for a lot of teams' rumors is smoke? No, I don't. Daniel says, hey, everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe to Pat's channel. Thanks, Daniel. Besides Trey White, have you heard any other names for the cornerback 2 position? Daniel says. No, Daniel, haven't yet. Don't have any specific names there for you other than Trey White, but I will get them to you guys as soon as I can. When I hear them, that'll continue to evolve over the next few days, next week or so, with White doing his visits, Rams, if he gets out of the Rams building, Titans, Giants, etc. But he, like I said, the fit for Trey White in New York makes sense from the standpoint of playing in the same kind of defense. It's not the same coaches, but it's going to be the same kind of defense that he's familiar with. But then again, he's a veteran. Does he want to be in a situation in LA where he's winning, right? Those are the questions. Hunter says, I 100% think the team that drafts McCarthy top 10 should pre-pack up their offense and get ready to be fired in 2 years. Wow. Yeah, Hunter, I'll be honest, McCarthy is an interesting study because, like Phil Simms told me, he said, I don't think he's a day one starter and I don't see him as a top 6 pick. But he said he could be the guy that you draft where if you're starting quarterback and your team start to slide, you're getting him ready in weeks 5 or 6 or 7 to go in, take the reins. Now you've developed him a little bit. He's gotten to watch a little bit. And now you put him in and you go, and then he's fine. Because he really doesn't have as much football on tape as some of these other guys, and certainly played in this tighter pro style offense for Michigan, rather than in a more spread out NFL style passing offense that some of these other guys did. So it really makes him a difficult study. And also, in scouting and when you're looking at the quarterback position, I mean, upside at this point is such a big thing to find if you have it. And given how much he won in college and the fact that there might be some untapped potential there, that's part of what excites people in the NFL, his physical abilities plus what they see as untapped potential. Now, obviously, you could see it differently. You could say, well, J.J. McCarthy has certain positives, but there's a reason why he was in this offense and they ran this kind of offense around him. And they didn't open it up to this or that or whatever. And, he doesn't have that upside. He's limited here and here and here, right? So those are the disagreements and the debates happening in NFL rooms right now over players like JJ. Hunter says he's better than JJ. The only thing better about JJ is the price tag. Salient says, have you seen Thor Nystrom's draft analysis? His detailed QB draft prospect breakdown is very detailed. I'll take a look at that. I haven't seen that specifically, but Thor does excellent work. That's for sure. So I will take a look at that, Salient. Thank you. Doug says, can you provide some clarity about what goes into top 30 visits and how they're any different than private visits, workouts, etc.? Well, top 30 visit is, each team gets 30 visits where they bring the player to their facility. And so they bring the draft prospect to their facility. A lot of times what it involves is a player, not always, but a lot of times what it involves is like the player coming in. Let's say their visit is on a Saturday. So they come in on Friday and they go to dinner with, members of the front office. It could be like Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and a position coach, let's say, and the player. And then the next day, the player comes to the facility, and does meetings there, and the team, medical evaluations, and the team takes a closer look in every way. And so those top 30 visits are a way for them to, hone in on the players that they really want to know more about. And sometimes the top 30 is about getting answers to questions that teams have not been able to solidify. So sometimes it indicates the team is hell-bent on that specific player and very interested. Sometimes teams do thorough evaluations and then they feel like, okay, we like this guy, but there's this huge gap in understanding of what happened in this incident in his junior year, or, is this injury a fluke thing or a sign of something to come, or, a trend, right? Or whatever it is. And so they sometimes use those 30s to get to the bottom of those details because they're making huge investments in these players. Obed says, if you don't pick a quarterback, there will be a new GM and head coach. Sometimes it could be that simple. Hirsch says, no comparison between JJ and Daniel. JJ is a terrific choice. Jacob says, who has more pressure, Dable, Shane, or both equally? Dable, as we sit here today, but could be both Dable and Shane equally if this season goes off the deep end like last year's did at the beginning. Maurice says, hey, Pat, happy Tuesday. What's up to all in the chat? Maurice, what's good? Obed, if they let someone go past them, Shane needs to be fired. Mark says, Chris Sims. Okay, yeah. Scorpio says, Pat, how much time would you give the coach and the GM? It's year 3. I think if this year is bad, it's the coach's last year. I think if it's not, horrendous, if it's an improvement, obviously, and things progress well, then of course you buy yourself some time, especially if you have a rookie quarterback in the building who's starting to look good and looks like the answer, those kind of things. That's how you get out of the woods. I would say right now it's tracking towards Dable going into year 3 on the hot seat, Joe Shane having 3 or 4 years, depending on what Dable's fate is and how bad the season gets or how positive the season gets. I mean, ideally, Joe Shane's here for the long haul. That's the way the Giants would see it, right? That's what they want. They want this to be sustainable. C-Note, thanks for the $2 there. Appreciate it. Really appreciate that support. Glock Roach checks in with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Glock. Glock says, what was more satisfying, the Tony trade finally happening or Brett Veach revealing that they were shopping for Tony in the spring? Oh, you're killing me, Glock. That's good. I would say, when it happened, it was, I'll tell you what, I did, I don't root for anything, but because of how much, not only how much nastiness and crap I took from fans on social media over that report, but also if you remember, there was an interaction in the press conference where Joe Shane, kind of went back at me over that topic, and fans treated it like he was dunking on me and like I was a clown for even suggesting it and this and that. And so those types of situations often create really contentious, let's say, interactions on social media. And it adds, it creates frustration, and it's a lot to handle when you see all that stuff coming at you. And so when the trade actually happened, it was just nice for people to just take a deep breath and realize I was right and they were wrong. And that Shane was, bluffing and just putting on a show during that press conference, and that I was right. So that was more satisfying. But you're right. The Brett Veach revealing they were shopping for Tony was that was a sneaky, oh yeah, right. No, it wasn't just the trade. It was the 100% correct report that they were that was happening early on when I put it out there. Glock, appreciate you calling back those pleasant memories. All right, let's see. Hirsch says Shane and Dable are not going to let Daniel Jones get them fired. They're absolutely drafting a quarterback. That's, it's hard for me not to agree with that. All right, let's see. Savage Steve says, can the Giants bring back their old uniforms for good? Yeah, Savage Steve, I agree with you, man. Every time they do these throwbacks or legacy games or whatever, that's the stuff. That's what, that's what they should be wearing. I agree. I'll be honest. I know that they're unlucky jerseys. I think the Giants red jerseys are awesome. Like, I know they haven't worn them in forever and they're unlucky and all that. I think the Giants red are sick. Like, I love them. Obed says our QB room of Locke and Jones isn't going to win. No Met says don't add Zeke. We need to draft a running back. Yeah, I still think they will. Salient says I was reading we only have around 10 million under the cap. I think it's about like 6.4 right now, according to the NFLPA. I assume we'll need a good portion for signing draft picks. Do you have any idea where we stand with the salary cap post free agency? Yeah, it's 6.4 million as of this morning, according to the PA's like official salary cap report. So you're right. In addition to the draft, you're signing guys like the restructures for Thomas and Lawrence. Those things make sense. No update on Darren Waller yet, country. Sorry about that. Looking for it as hard as I can. Cameron says he would love 2 first-round picks in a trade, possibly. So does Christian in the Vikings trade back. Interesting. Hunter says draft one of the wide receivers or trade it. Jacob says Chargers letting Williams and Allen go impacted our strategy. 2 of the top 3 receivers could be gone by 6 now. Yeah, doesn't it seem like the Chargers draft a wide receiver at 5? Like, there's all these people saying they're going to trade out of 5, but why would they trade out of 5 when they let their 2 top receivers go? Like, isn't it obvious they're taking a receiver there, right? So, yeah, that's interesting. That's why I think, there's a good chance that the top 5 picks ahead of the Giants, you have to think it's going to be 3 quarterbacks and 2 receivers is the most likely breakdown of those picks, right? So you're either getting QB 4 or wide receiver 3. But in this draft, that could be McCarthy or Drake May. It could be Adunze, right? I mean, we'll see. Christian says the draft starts with New England. We know who number 1 and 2 quarterbacks are. I think so too. Hunter says Giants can't afford to throw away the 6th pick on a quarterback with a lot of doubt. Either take the receiver that seems bust-proof or take the draft capital. Robert Mead says I'm all for trading back. Candyman says, just to elaborate, take Thomas at 11 and Nix or Penix at 23. Candyman, again, I liked your you got us going today with that potential trade back suggestion. I like it. I don't think Bo Nix will be there at 23. I think the Broncos like him, and that makes sense to me as a match. I don't think he'll be on the board. Now, Penix could be an option there. Now, the question is, how do the Giants feel about the injury history there, right? If you get the 2 firsts and you get, Adunze, then you get his quarterback, right? I mean, not crazy, not crazy. Candyman's bringing it today. Bringing it. Mark, thanks for checking in again with another $5 super chat. Mark says, recency bias or truth? People claiming Donald is the defensive GOAT over Lawrence Taylor. Sacrilege to me. I agree. Sacrilege. I think it's recency bias. Donald is extremely special, crazy, incredible player. And, but LT just another level, right? I think a lot of times this happens, Mark, where it's like the same idea of, young people who follow basketball now have no concept of what made Michael Jordan so great, like, let's say, right? When they're comparing players of these eras, and not to get into a LeBron MJ argument, but, I feel like you can't forget the historical context, and you can't forget about when guys were playing, but also just if you didn't see a guy play, how could you actually accurately talk about it? Donald is a tremendous, incredible, amazing player who wrecks games and teams had to prepare for, wins 1 Super Bowl. I think he was an 8-time All-Pro. But LT, I mean, here's the funny thing. Imagine if LT took care of his body the way that Aaron Donald did, right? Imagine the player he would have been then. No, I'm still going Lawrence Taylor. I agree with you. Simeon says we see Pat Hanlon a lot less under the Shane regime. Is this on purpose? No, Pat Hanlon, who runs the Giants PR department, he's the head of the PR department there. Pat is, still with the Giants. He works primarily at the top with, at the ownership level, right? So, the PR departments, people rise up these departments and they move up. And then, so let's say one day he was involved more with the players in the locker room, then ends up working more with the coach and general manager and still does some of that, but more and more ends up, closer to ownership and handling those situations. The same way in the National Football League, there's different PR people who handle the commissioner, Roger Goodell, but then also work with, then there's other PR people who work more directly with other officials or, principals in the league. Let's see. No, Metz says extra picks won't matter if the GM can't draft well. Joe is on the clock. Got to show us he knows how to draft the right talent. No, Metz, that's a really good point. Is that Joe Shane's draft record is spotty to this point, and he needs to hit on these picks. Hunter says, I think Giants were trying to avoid the shitstorm. They saw what people said about him. Just as easy not to post one. Oh, about Saquon. They were trying to stay out of it, you're saying. Yeah, but the Giants aren't the Giants fans. They're the Giants. So the fans have every right to be angry that Saquon chose the Giants completely, right? But I don't know. I just think it would set a good example, and it's the classy thing to do. It's the classy thing to do. Say goodbye and thank you. I know he's not. Listen, Saquon's not. Eli Manning, Michael Strahan. He's not. He didn't win Super Bowls here. He's not. All time. Winning Giant, those kind of things. But he carried himself well, represented the organization, especially through some tough times. Put all of himself into 6 years of their organization, and aspired to the same thing they did of having him be a Giant for life. It didn't happen, but they wanted him to be that. They viewed him as that, and so if they really did view him as that, then you would think they lost something great here. Jacob says, do you believe in the notion that owners have to be in the discussions when drafting a quarterback? Yeah, it's their team. They're always going to be, whether you want them to or not. Jarius says, do we still have Bryce Ford Wheaton? Yes. In fact, Bryce was walking around on the field with a brace on his knee, catching balls out of the jug machine before the season was over. So I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but Bryce was up on his feet, catching balls out of the jug machine, kind of hanging around at practice late in the year. Like no helmet or pads on or anything, but that was encouraging to see. That was the rookie receiver last year, undrafted rookie receiver last year, who was looking promising in camp before he got hurt, obviously. So good question, Jarius. Thanks for bringing Bryce up. Hopefully he can end up being a contributor for this team. Mark says, is it so hard for people to grasp that Shane could actually still believe in the quarterback he gave a huge deal to after last season? Exhibited the worst, after last season exhibited literally the worst case scenario. Mark, it's interesting because Joe Shane very much did publicly say that he believes in Daniel Jones still. But everything else you hear when you talk to people in the league about the Giants and how they feel about Daniel feels like either the opposite or a much less confident version of those comments. So, the Giants have said a lot of things that haven't come to pass. Like, we expect this to happen. We expect that to happen, and they don't happen, right? So do you expect Daniel Jones to be the week 1 starter? Does that mean he's going to be the week 1 starter? I think that leaves the door open for some changes. But we'll see, Mark. I think it's a good point. But Mark, that's why I said I can't wait to I can't wait to get to these owners meetings and figure more out and try to clarify some things with Shane and Dable and John Mara on the quarterback position. Although we might just get the same answers and be in the same kind of tailspin trying to interpret it all. Hunter says, I think Mara would have a reason to be wary. Look how that trade worked for the Panthers last year. Jacob says, you think the Seattle GM's comments about Locke were accurate, or is he just trying to make us look bad since we didn't allow Kafka to be their offensive coordinator? Jacob, I like how you're thinking there. I like how you're thinking. You're going next level there with the, okay, you're going to keep Mike away from us. This is what I'm going to do to you. Hey, that's funny. Hey, listen, I wouldn't put that past anybody. Those are the kind of things that do happen in the NFL. I like where your head's at, Jacob. No, I mean, I had heard the same thing earlier that day. I swear. I mean, I'm not the guy. I'm not the reporter who, like, after the fact, needs to tell people I knew it beforehand if I didn't get it or whatever. But I promise you that the same day Schneider went on the radio and said that, I was talking to somebody on the phone a couple hours before who said that Drew had signed with the Giants because they told him he'd have a chance to play and to start, to compete for playing time there. And, Schneider's comments just reinforced what I had heard. That was the second time I had heard something like that. But it was the most direct way I had heard it. And then Schneider saying that, it kind of everything all clicked into place. So yeah, no, I think Daniel's injury history has as much to do with this as anything else too. Country New Yorker says, with the Giants only getting Drew Lock on a 1-year deal, doesn't that mean we will draft a quarterback in the draft sooner rather than later? Well, you're not going to commit to a player like Lock for a long term anyway. So if he fares well, he's still, relatively young. If you want to extend it, like, you could always extend a player like that if he really turns out to be that good and not draft a quarterback theoretically. But Country, I agree with you. I think that their investment in the position points to drafting a quarterback, bringing a young guy in. But it is interesting them talking about Locke having a chance to play. Like, would he really have a chance to play if they drafted a quarterback high in the first round? Because if Daniel was the starter and they drafted a guy at 6, if Daniel struggled, then why would Drew Lock go in when the rookie was there, right? In New York? Like, what would the fans think if Drew Lock went in and played while, the Giants rookie quarterback was just sitting there on the bench developing and learning, right? So now, as I've said, that's what Joe Shane and Brian Dable ideally want to do. They want to bring in a quarterback here who can watch and develop. That's something they would really like to do, like the Green Bay idea, the Jordan Love idea, right? Aaron Rodgers from Brett Favre, that kind of thing. So that's something they would love to do. Just a question of whether they can execute it and where that pick comes from. Mark says, Pat, you and Bobby Skinner from Talkin Giants are my top favorites. You should do a joint podcast. Thanks for saying that, Mark. Appreciate you, man. Brett says, DJ is my quarterback. How long would he have lasted if he wasn't a mobile quarterback evading sacks? What if he had a true number one and an average line, the same coaches and the same line even? DJ isn't the problem. He's such a polarizing player. Jacob says, since we have a new O-line coach, you think we get him a few new big boys in the draft? Yes, I do. Let's see. Danny says Daniel Jones isn't mobile. He runs fast in a straight line. I think what you're getting at, Danny, is that he doesn't always navigate the pocket well. He can run, but he doesn't navigate the pocket well. Any info on a possible restructure of Andrew Thomas? Could that be less of a priority if they're assuming Waller will retire and return some cap space? I think the restructures still are going to happen, probably, like with Thomas. I just think they're not going to happen until they need to happen. So closer to the draft. Michael says they should bench Jones for this year because of his injury clause in his contract. It's too much money to risk. That would be something. Steven says that neck crack says it all. Oh yeah, that's Believe me, that's something I wish that I didn't have to do as often as I did, Steven, that's for sure. Putting in the work, man, putting in the work. Any mid to late round prospects you've heard Giants have some interest in? If not mistaken, I know they brought in Trey Hawkins for a 30 visit, and you rightly tabbed him as a very possible day 3 target. Corey, yes, that's right. Remember that. Good point. No, not yet. Not yet. Gotta run those down though, for sure. Great question. Scott says, is Darren Roller retiring? How much time does he need to make a decision? I would hope sooner than later. He did say it wasn't going to be by the start of free agency, but he wasn't going to drag it out forever. So I would think it'll happen relatively soon, but I don't know his answer yet. It feels to me like he's going to retire. If this is taking that long and he's deliberating that much on it, but I can't speak for him. I don't know yet. Danny says, what would be more of a reach, drafting Daniel Jones 6 overall or JJ McCarthy 6 overall? I say DJ. He would be 7th or 8th quarterback taken if he came out this year. C-Note says, call me crazy, but I was around to see Sims early, struggles with injuries and benching. Give it Jones a fair shot with a line and an alpha receiver. Can always make a move for a quarterback next year. Just me. C-Note, that's possible too. I keep going back on that though with so Jones's injury, the neck injuries are big concern. Also, like somebody said earlier, are Shane and Dable really going to go? Like, if they go down, are they going to go down with Daniel Jones and that contract as their defining, move at the quarterback position when they got a chance to be a head coach and a GM? I don't know. That's what makes me pause on something like what you said, because you bring up a lot of good points there, C-Note. And thanks for the sticker too. But I just I don't know. I hesitate a little bit there because of that. Let's see. PG says JJ is a way better prospect than Daniel Jones, but I'm worried JJ, like Fields or Haskins, is overrated and carried by a loaded roster. Country New Yorker says, what are the details of Jones's contract when it pertains to injury? Will the Giants owe money if he gets hurt in 2024 and have to pay money in 2025? So he has injury-related guarantees in his contract for 2025. So let's see. So Jones has a paragraph 5 salary guaranteed for injury only for 2025. So, right. So he has what is it? Is it 23 million total? I think it is. Let me see. I have to double check a couple of these details here. I want to say I'm looking at the contract as we sit here right now. I believe he has the bulk of his 2025 paragraph 5 for that season guaranteed for injury only. I think it's $23 million. So that's something to consider there, is the 23 million. I have to present that all in a story, though. I have to get that all out there because I know that's something fans have asked a lot about, like those specifics. Are there a specific amount of pro days a team is allowed to go to? Excuse me. No, there's not a limited amount of pro days you can attend. Just more about logistics, Jacob, and what you can get to and how you have to prioritize it. Hunter says, could a 30 visit, for example, be the 104th best player available, or does it have to be a top 30 projected pick? Oh, no, it can be any player you want. They just call it top 30 because it's it's kind of like a select group. But no, it doesn't have to be a player who's projected to go in the top 50 or anything like that. It could be anybody you want. Intel, what's up? What's my feeling on the Giants selecting JJ McCarthy? I think it's on the board. Intel, I heard that the Giants were not thrilled that it got out that they like him the other day. Definitely something to keep in mind. That this is a player who they've shown interest in. They showed interest in at the combine significantly. They've brought in now for a top 30 visit, private dinner, etc. Obviously, he's under consideration, and obviously the quarterback position is under consideration. We already knew these things. We already knew he was going to take a 30 visit. We already knew all that, but it is something else to actually see it play out this close to the draft, right? Candyman, thanks for the $2 here. Candyman says, do you plan on doing a Giants mock draft? Yes. Typically what I'll do, Candyman, is I will do I think what I've done in recent years is one mock draft, maybe the Monday before the draft. So the start of that week is when I do it. I think that's what I did last year. I don't think it was as late as Wednesday, but yes, you can look for a mock draft from me. Typically, I do the first round. But if you guys would like, I could do a first round and also like a Giants full draft one if you'd like something like that. All right, coming down the home stretch here of our chat. Let's see. Hunter says, I'm not against drafting JJ, but I'm against drafting him at 6. Maybe a deal comes about. They get a pick in the teens from a team trading up. I'd be interested in that. Yeah, it's funny too, though, because if you trade back with the Vikings, you'd say, oh, let's take him at 11, but the Vikings would probably be coming up to get him. Yeah, Tariq, I can't say that out loud. Sorry. Hunter wants to know if the Giants could get Bowers at 11 if Waller retires and they make that trade with the Vikings. Yeah, not out of the question. That could be the range for him for sure. Scott says, I don't think the Giants won't be taking a QB. I don't think the Giants will be taking a QB at 6, but I can see the Giants moving back into the first round to grab one. I can see that too. Do the Giants like McCarthy over May? I like May over McCarthy, just FYI. May profiles more as the Giants type of guy than McCarthy. Like as far as his height, weight, speed, those abilities, McCarthy seems though like extremely likable, leader, winner. So both guys have good qualities. I don't know the answer to that. What you just said, I don't know who they like more there. I would, from the outside looking in, I would say May, but throughout this whole process, like since from the start of the NFL Combine to now, it's hard not to feel like they don't like McCarthy more. But who knows if what we hear is noise or is grounded in reality. It feels like McCarthy is closer to the guy though. Tariq says, never trust a quarterback out of a basketball school. Hunter wishes he got to see LT play. He was before his time. LT changed the game. LT changed the game. All modern ends, OLBs use the techniques LT brought to rush the quarterbacks, says Robert. That's right, man. That's right. LT has admitted he too wished he would have taken better care of himself physically, says Simeon. That's right. Tariq says Michael Penix might be one of the top 3 best quarterbacks out of this whole draft when it is all said and done. And those who pass will never live that down because his talents were staring them right in the face. Tariq, I'll say this. I don't know if he'll have a long career. Who knows if his injuries catch up to him. But I agree with you that I think he could end Penix, he could, for example, he could end up winning Rookie of the Year. Like offensive Rookie of the Year. He could, or just end up being the most productive rookie quarterback in this draft. I'm not, who knows where he goes, but I just think he's closer to being ready to play. He's got a great arm. He's played a lot of high level ball. Excuse me. Running out of gas here, guys. I'm getting to the finish line, though. Sorry. All right. Hunter says, even if Joe didn't believe in Danny, he wouldn't come out and say that he doesn't believe in him. Tariq says, would Walter Payton be a Hall of Famer if he played with the offenses and teams Saquon played with? You're killing me. Robert Mead says, in my opinion, all the talk is a smokescreen. So everyone thinks the Giants are going QB, but they're taking a wide receiver with 6. Huh. That would certainly move more in line with Shane's on-the-record comments in believing in Jones. And then Locke would be the addition to compete with Daniel to either take his job from him if he's underperforming or be better insurance for the short term. But still, you don't have a solution for your long-term quarterback position. Brett says, if Daboll and Shane are fired after next season, is Wink the next head coach? I'm calling it now. That's funny. I think Bill Belichick's your first call, and then you go from there. Scott says, what are your thoughts on drafting Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round if he's still there? I like Spencer a lot. I think he's a gamer. He's 6'1", which is not like 5'10", but is not typically where the Giants, where they usually look for like 6'4", 6'5" QBs. Excuse me, I'm a mess. All right, guys. I'm deteriorating right now, as you can see, losing my voice. My sickness is catching up to me. I'm not fully over it. So I'm going to cut this a little bit short here. I mean, we're an hour and a half in. But you guys have been great tonight. Remember, we are the Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. typically. This is going to be our only one of the week. I'm going to the NFL owners meetings. This is going to be our only one this week. So this Tuesday one, our only one this week. We are going to be at Orlando NFL owners meetings from Sunday to Wednesday. I will be at the coaches breakfast, the AFC coaches breakfast, and the NFC with Brian Daboll. Be down there talking to Joe Shane, talking to John Mara, talking to owners and executives and coaches around the league, and continuing to work the free agency angles, the NFL draft hype and news and nuggets, and try to come back with more to bring to you guys on these lives. Don't know yet exactly what the live schedule is going to look like next week. I know I'm going to come back and do one on Thursday night after the owners meetings. Going to try to squeeze one in at the beginning of the week while we're at owners as well. Not sure if it's going to happen or not, but there should be a lot to talk about then. So hopefully we can squeeze one in on the Monday evening when I'm down there, but I will update you. But remember, we are sponsored by BetOnline and by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. Takes 3 seconds to make a nice coffee. I drink it all the time when I'm doing Talkin Ball. Drinking tea tonight to help me get better. But listen, you guys have been great. Thank you for all the super chats and the super stickers. Some great questions, some great dialogue and conversations. I look forward to these all the time. And I can't wait to see you next time here on Talkin Ball Live. Brett, thank you. Candy, Country, Mark, I am a fan, Hunter. You guys are awesome. See you next time. If you missed it, you were late, whatever it is, you can catch this. We typically load these lives on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast feed. You can find that on Apple's, Spotify, or watch the rewind on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit the thumbs up button. And I'm producing a lot of more content now on YouTube Shorts, bringing you guys news and analysis right after signing. So we will see you there. We'll see you here, and see you down in Orlando from the owners' meetings shortly.